The best dry molasses out there is by a company called Nature's Guide. The best that I've found, they actually take soybean meal and soak the molasses into it. But remember, it doesn't dissolve. It's in solid form. Everybody should know this, especially somebody that sells sprayers. The man that sold me the sprayer that I pull behind my tractor should know better. He decided he was going to spray his field with molasses, so he went and got some bags of dry molasses and dumped them in the tank. Took him 3 days to clean his sprayer out. It clogged it up so badly. So if you're going to spray, use liquid. If you're going to put it on dry, use dry molasses, but they are not interchangeable. But both of them are wonderful things to use to improve the quality of your soil, but the way they do it is by increasing microbial activity. Don't overdo it. If you put it on too strong, you can't actually kill things. It creates so much biological activity. Anybody ever fight nutgrass? Do you ever have a problem with nutgrass? You don't have to use any kind of poisons to get rid of nutgrass. You can kill it with molasses. Mix your molasses, about half a cup of molasses to a gallon of water. And you have to do this when it's dry. When it's real wet, nothing kills nutgrass. But in a dry season, go ahead and just pour that on your nutgrass. Do it again in about 3 or 4 weeks, and a month later your nutgrass will be dead and gone. You can use too much molasses, but in the garden it'd be difficult. Anyway, I digress. You got to get organic material into the garden, and then you need to use a good fertilizer in your garden. I like starting out, I like dry fertilizers, granular fertilizers. Really the only reason is because they last and they continue to work for a longer period of time than the liquids. Liquids are great, but you're going to be putting your liquids out every couple of weeks. You can put the dry on and it'll be there for 6 or 8 weeks, and then you can just put it on a whole lot less often. Take your choice, but I like using dry fertilizers to start with. And I like using organic fertilizers. Now, I just told you some of the bad things that chemical fertilizers do in soil. Another problem we have with chemical fertilizers, and those of y'all that have come the past couple of weeks, I realize this is repeating the same thing. But everybody remembers your basic biology or chemistry or physics or whatever, that like charges repel. Positive repels positive. Negative repels negative. If you switch them around, like charges attract. Positive, negative bind together. You've taken those magnets, at least I did as a kid, you turn them the wrong way and you see if you can force them together and you're not strong enough to do it, you turn them around the other way and they just lock together. Well, why is that important? Our soils are full of clay particles, which for the most part carry a negative charge with them. When you put on a chemical fertilizer, you're putting on nitrates, nitrites, phosphates, sulfates. You're putting on little particles that have a negative charge. When you put a negative charge chemical product on a negatively charged soil, what happens? They repel each other, and most of it washes away. When you put out chemical fertilizers, probably 90% of it or more washes away. Now, number one, that's not doing your plants much good, but even worse, you're causing horrible pollution problems. If you listen to Bruce Dooley on Saturday afternoons on KTSA, you'll hear him talk about the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know how big it is this year, but I know last year it covered hundreds and hundreds of square miles, bigger than 2 or 3 of the New England states. Why is there a dead zone? Why is there an area that there are no fish, no oysters, no clams, no crabs or anything else? Because of all the fertilizer that's washing down the Mississippi River. They have now found that there are dead zones. Every major river where it empties into the ocean will have a dead zone out there just from the chemical fertilizers that wash down the river. Not necessarily the chemical fertilizers that are killing, but they're causing weird things to happen with algae that end up killing everything in the water. That's one of the other problems with chemical fertilizers. Organic fertilizers, now they have their components in a positively charged form. We call it a cation, usually in the form of what we call ammoniacal compounds. So you put your fertilizer out and it binds to the soil. Okay, number one, the plants are going to get the benefit of probably 95 to 98% of that fertilizer material. Virtually none of it washes away. The plant, when it's ready for that chemical or from that natural fertilizer, can actually break it free from the soil. It releases a stronger positive charge, grabs the nutrient particle, and that's why organic products are so much more efficient in how they feed your plants. They stay in the soil longer, they don't wash away, they don't cause pollution problems. Had a big fight with developers when they were going to do the PGA Village, trying to get them to go organic. They said, oh, we can't use organic fertilizers, we'd pollute the aquifer. I'm saying, you're calling yourself an engineer and you don't even know the basics of soil chemistry. Anyway, organics are the way to go in your garden. Organics just don't burn. The only disadvantage to organics is some organic products and some good fertilizers. The company makes Maestro Grow products, which I think are wonderful fertilizers, but don't use them if you have a dog, because they use a lot of alfalfa in making their fertilizers. And puppy dogs are smart creatures. They know alfalfa tastes good and it's good for you, and they will happily eat all the fertilizers you put on your plants. You mix cayenne pepper with it, by the way, if you want to avoid that problem. But anyway, organic products are what I would use in the garden. Yes, sir?
I had a question about the solids. We started using the solids, and we had feral hogs, and they found it. Apparently, it was edible, so they ate about half of it. We got the big bag, so we put it in a plastic bucket with a lid to solve that problem. We sprinkle it on the plants. Do we need to mix it in the soil?
No. With organic fertilizers, you can put them right on the surface. Now, like everything else, to be used by the plants, they're going to be digested by microbes in the soil. If you want to make them work faster, put your fertilizer down and then put a thin layer of compost on top of it. That way you'll get them into a usable form a whole lot faster. But there's no reason that you have to work with soil at all. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question about compost. You rated the other composts, and you mentioned Ladybug and New Earth. Can you give me an estimation of the ABC who will come out and spray the compost? What kind of compost might I be getting?
Well, I wouldn't put it on your vegetable garden. And this is just a personal thing, I do not like biosolids compost. Biosolids, we call them biosolids because nobody wants to call them sewage sludge anymore, which is what biosolids compost is. The nice name they apply to it here is Alamo Grow. And when you buy Gardenville, some of their fertilizers, and when you buy their Alamo Grow compost, that's what you're getting. And that's the one thing that I don't like about ABC, is that's the compost they use, because it's the only one that they've really found will go through that big blower real well. I'm trying to get them to work more with New Earth and trying to get New Earth to screen their material where it will go through their sprayer. I think it's fine on the yard, but I wouldn't use it in my vegetable garden. Other question? Yes, sir?
Just real quick about compost piles. What do you put your kitchen scraps and things like? The reason I asked, I have a compost pile, but when turning it, you get those great big huge slugs.
Slugs or grub worms?
Grub worms, sorry.
Those are not bad. Those are the grubs. Every kind of beetle out there has a grub as an intermediate stage of its life, and those are not the grubs that eat your lawn. Now, around here, if you look like you have a sense of humor, you may be in trouble because you're going to get teased. And when somebody comes in and they look like they have a sense of humor and they have those giant grubs, I'll look at them and say, oh my God, is this dome dirt? Or, do you live on toxic waste stuff? No, the truth is that's a whole different species of beetle. It's not going to cause any problem whatsoever in your garden. It's something that eats compost, not plant roots. Yes, ma'am.
Is it okay to use oak leaves? Someone told me don't use oak leaves because they might have a fungus or something.
No. You can go back and inform your friend. Anything that was once alive. Very quickly. If it was once alive, it can be used to make compost. Oak leaves are slow to break down, and they take longer to decompose, but there's no fungus or anything like that in there. Virtually everything in the world, anything toxic in this world, with only one exception that I know of, will be digested either by microbes or destroyed by heat. A compost pile may easily get up to 180 degrees. So you're going to break any pathogenic material down that's in there. Everybody says, can I throw dog poop in the compost pile? Sure, if you want to. But it's going to be decomposed and broken down to where there's nothing harmful left in it. But the harder and tougher the material is, the bigger it is, the faster it's going to, or the longer it's going to take to break down. Oak leaves are very tough, and they don't break down nearly as quickly as ash leaves. Big chunks of wood don't break down nearly as quickly as little pieces of sawdust. So anything that you can do to chop it up, run your mower through those leaves 2 or 3 times, throw them in there, they'll break down a lot faster. The ideal compost pile will be a mixture of what we call brown materials, carbonaceous materials like leaves and things like that, and green materials, or materials that contain more nitrogen. That would include your kitchen scraps, that would include some animal waste, that would include when you grind up the little bitty small limbs on the tree, you're getting a lot of what we call the cambium in there, you're getting a lot of protein, which has a lot of nitrogen in it. And it's very different